The narcissist isn't afraid of your anger. They're not afraid of being exposed or criticized. In fact, they feed off it because to them, any reaction, positive or negative, is proof that they still occupy space in your mind. Every tear you shed, every message you send, every moment you agonize over them is fuel that feeds the distorted ego they've spent a lifetime building. But then one day you stop crying. You're no longer angry, no longer waiting, no longer needing an apology or an explanation. You simply feel nothing. And that quiet moment, what seems like peace, is actually a silent earthquake that shatters the narcissist's inner world. Because to them, silence isn't just no contact, it's a loss of control. They can't manipulate someone who no longer feels. They can't control someone who no longer expects. And they cannot survive the terrifying truth. You've truly stepped out of the script they once wrote for you. You're not yelling, you're not begging. You don't need to prove your strength. It's the fact that you're no longer trying that breaks them. Not because you hate them, but because you've healed. Not because you're using silence as a tactic, but because there's nothing left to say. And to the narcissist, that inner calm is a fatal wound. In this video, we'll uncover the layers of psychology the narcissist goes through when they realize you no longer care. From denial control tactics, rage and truth distortion, to the emptiness and identity collapse. Each stage reveals one thing. They are not afraid of losing you. They're afraid of losing the version of themselves you once reflected. And you'll come to understand you don't need revenge to win. You only need to no longer belong to them. Stage 1, denial. They're just denial testing me. There's no way they're really done when the narcissist realizes you're no longer texting, no longer reacting, no longer present in their life the way you once were. Their first instinct isn't pain, it's denial. In their distorted worldview, the idea that you've truly stopped caring just can't be real. They're far too used to you coming back, apologizing, softening, or at the very least resisting. So their first stage isn't acceptance, it's rewriting reality to preserve a sense of control. They'll convince themselves you're just upset that you're testing them, that you're waiting to be chased to them. Silence can't be an ending. It has to be a tactic, a move in the emotional game they still believe they're playing. They think you're still there watching, hoping. And that belief isn't rooted in love, it's rooted in the illusion of power. That's why during the denial phase, they start subtly testing for a reaction. It might be a vague post on social media, a casual message like just checking in a word sent through mutual friends, or even showing up somewhere they know you'll see them. Every action is a test, not because they care, but because they need to know they still have influence. And when you don't react, when you don't get angry, don't get emotional, don't respond, that denial begins to crack. Their mind starts to spiral with uncertainty. Wait, is this real this time? They're not ready to face a reality that doesn't revolve around them. So they double down. More signals, more emotional traps. But you stay silent, not to provoke, but because you're truly free. And this is the first moment the narcissist begins to feel lost. No more mirror, no more feedback, no more echo from their familiar manipulations. This isn't about losing an ex. This is about losing the stage where they were always the star, and they're not ready to leave the spotlight. Stage 2, reasserting control. Reasserting control. I can still pull them back. Once denial starts to crack, the narcissist moves into the next phase. And this is when they take action. No more vague signals or passive checking. Now they roll out calculated strategies to pull you back into their control. Because in their mind, your departure isn't an act of independence. It's a power vacuum that needs to be filled. They'll try every tactic they once believed worked: sweet messages, nostalgic memories, dramatic apologies, or promises of change, as if they've had a sudden awakening. But this isn't real remorse. It's desperation driven by the fear of losing their grip. For a narcissist, love has never been about connection. It's about control. When you stayed, they could manipulate. When you were angry, they could recalibrate. When you pushed back, they could play the victim to reclaim dominance. But when you have no reaction at all, you break the loop they once ruled, and that sends them into panic. At this stage, they may swing from kind to chaotic in an instant. One day, it's a tender message, the next, it's anger or blame accusing you of being cold or cruel. All of it is a search for one thing, an emotional opening, any weakness they can exploit to drag you back into being their mirror. They don't need you to come back out of love. They just need you to react, because reaction confirms they still exist in your mind. Without it, their ego begins to collapse. The calmer you are, the more chaotic they become. The quieter you are, the louder their internal screaming gets. And though they may smile in public, post happy photos, or flaunt a new person, it's all just a hastily built mask to cover the truth. They no longer control you. Deep down, they know the tricks that once worked are now powerless. They're flailing in desperation, trying to tug on a rope you've already let go of and are not ready to face it. Because this time, you didn't just pause, you let go. And that didn't just end a relationship. It took away the one foundation the narcissist relied on to feel valuable. Stage 3. Rage. How dare they rage? Not need me when every effort to pull you back, regain control, or manipulate you has failed. The narcissist finds themselves with nowhere left to hide. This is when the calm exterior starts to crack, and the rage underneath begins to surface. But this isn't the kind of anger born from heartbreak. It's the fury of someone who always believed they would have power over you. Now being forced to confront a truth, they cannot accept that you no longer need them. In their mind, the real question isn't, why did you leave, but how dare you leave without apologizing? How dare you stay silent without falling apart? How dare you live well without me to the narcissist? Your independence feels like rebellion. It doesn't just challenge their authority. It collapses the grand illusion of dominance they built up in their own mind. This rage doesn't always explode in dramatic ways. Many narcissists won't yell or lash out publicly. Instead, they'll choose more covert paths of destruction. They might start spreading rumors, twisting facts, and portraying themselves as the victim, casting you as the cold, heartless one who abandoned them. At this stage, their goal isn't to bring you back. It's to rescue their image, at least in the eyes of others. And more importantly, in their own fragile perception of reality. Since they can't control you anymore, they shift to controlling how others perceive you. Because in their world, if they can't be seen as the one who was loved, they'll settle for being seen as the one who was hurt. No matter what role they play, hero, victim, or martyr, the objective remains the same. Stay in control of the story. This kind of rage may also push them into self-destructive behaviors. They might start living recklessly, rushing into shallow relationships, or spending without thinking, desperate to escape the emptiness that's now closing in on them. But beneath all the chaos, one fact continues to stab at them like a silent dagger. You no longer react. And for the narcissist, that's unbearable. In the past, a single cold glance from you was enough to make them feel real, to remind them they still had a hold on your emotions. But now you don't look, you don't speak, you don't feel anything. And to a narcissist, that's not just your absence, it's total erasure. And that's when they finally understand. Though they'll never admit it, you've done the one thing they cannot cope with. You've truly let go. Stage 4, rewriting the narrative. Narrative, I'll make them the villain when their simmering rage fails to ignite you. The way they hope, the narcissist shifts to a new strategy, rewriting the story. If they can't control you through emotion, they'll control the narrative about you. They revise the script, a distorted version in which they're the noble victim and you are the ungrateful, cold, or inexplicably cruel villain. To the narcissist, the truth doesn't matter. What matters is a version of reality that spares them from feeling like a failure. and because you didn't give them a satisfying ending. No begging, no coming back, no dramatic closure. They write their own ending in a way that absolves them of blame. You may have loved them deeply, forgiven them, repeatedly tried to fix things you never broke. But in their retelling, you're the one who suddenly disappeared. The emotionally unstable one, the control freak, or even a covert manipulator disguised as kindness. Every act of love, every pain you endured is twisted to serve one purpose, to make them look pitiful and you look wrong. Why do they do this not out of revenge, but to protect the fragile ego that is fracturing more each day without someone there to validate it? They cannot accept that you left because you'd had enough. They cannot stand the fact that you are living in peace, happy, and not mentioning them at all because that would mean they're no longer important. And to a narcissist, insignificance is worse than hatred. They need a narrative to fill that void. They need others to look at you with suspicion. Not because you matter to them, but because the narcissist cannot tolerate being forgotten. But here's what they didn't expect. You don't respond anymore. You don't defend yourself. Don't correct the story. Don't rush to clean up the mess they've made of your reputation. And that silence wounds them more deeply than any confrontation ever could. Because when you no longer fight to protect your image, you've stepped off the game board entirely. And no matter how many versions they rewrite, the narcissist can't recreate the mirror that once reflected them so clearly like you did. Stage 5. Emptiness without. Emptiness reflection? Who am I after trying everything? Denial, reasserting control, rage, and rewriting the story. The narcissist is finally confronted with something they've spent their entire life avoiding. Emptiness? There's no one left to manipulate, no gaze left to influence, no reaction left to feed on. They begin to fall into a void that no supply can fill. At their core, narcissists don't build identity from within like emotionally healthy individuals do. They exist through reflection, through how others see them, through attention, through pain, even through contempt. Every response is proof that they still have weight in someone's world. But when you stop looking their way, not with love, not with anger, not even with indifference, they feel as though they're being erased from reality. This isn't the pain of lost love. This is a full-blown identity crisis. The narcissist begins to ask themselves, who am I, when no one is telling me who I am? A seemingly simple question becomes a bottomless pit, because they never truly knew. They only knew themselves through what others reflected. He's charming, she's admirable, they're powerful. But when you walk away quietly without explanation, that mirror disappears. They start to feel invisible. No one to make jealous. No one to play the victim to. No one to compare their new partner with all the scripts they once controlled. The emotional plays they once directed so successfully now play out on an empty stage without an audience. And in the silence, they feel something for the first time. Something they don't even have the language for. Non-existence, a cold, drifting, disconnected feeling as if every mask they've ever worn has fallen away, revealing an emptiness they don't recognize and can't make sense of. You, the one who once saw them most clearly, are no longer there to see them at all. And in the eyes of someone new, they're just a recycled performance. No depth, no connection. Not real. And that's what drives them mad. Not that you left, but that you once truly saw them and still chose to walk away. This emptiness can't be filled with things praise or replacement relationships because the problem isn't who's standing next to them. It's that they're no longer standing within themselves. Stage 6, the search for a replacement. I need someone to fill this void. When the narcissist no longer receives reflection from you, they don't turn inward to discover themselves. Instead, they desperately search for another mirror. Anyone who can help them feel real again. And so begins a frantic, shallow, and hollow pursuit. They need someone to replace you. Don't mistake this behavior as a sign that they've moved on. In reality, the rush to fall into someone else's arms isn't proof of healing. It's evidence that they can't bear to be alone with themselves. The new person isn't chosen out of love, but out of their temporary ability to reflect the ego. You once helped them feel. They'll repeat the same script. Whirlwind romance grand promises staged photos of happiness. But it's not just about convincing the new person. It's about convincing themselves that I still matter. I'm still in control. Deep down, though, they know the truth. You, the one who saw their real self, no longer believes in that performance. And no matter how naive the new partner may be, they can never truly replace you because you weren't just another source. You were the only one who sensed the depth behind the mask. You were patient. You believed in them. You waited for growth. You touched the most fragile part of them. The part they tried to hide, yet desperately wished to be seen. And when you left, you took with you the only thing that ever gave them a glimpse of their real self. The new person might be easier to control, easier to please, less likely to question, but they lack depth. They can't see the cracks. And because of that, with every glance, every interaction, the narcissist is reminded of you not out of love, but because you were the only mirror that ever reflected their fractures with clarity. That's why they compare, why they check on you, why they mention you subtly in nameless conversations. No one else can replace you because no one else ever saw them the way you did. And for the narcissist, that's both an obsession and a quiet torment. So they keep searching, rushing into love, repeating empty lines, trying to resurrect a script that's already collapsed. But the harder they try, the more breathless they become, because not one person has ever made them feel exposed and still accepted. And now there's no one left who's willing to look anymore. Stage 7, ego collapse. Ego collapse, know who I am anymore. After the frantic searching, after reenacting the same old scripts, after countless failed attempts to replace you, the narcissist enters the most dangerous phase of all ego collapse. This is no longer a fleeting emotion or a surface-level tantrum. This is a deep internal unraveling, a kind of existential confusion for which they have no language and even less capacity to fail because they never built a real self. Since childhood, they learned to survive by reacting to how others saw them, not by developing a dialogue with themselves. They grew up in a world where self-worth was measured by how well they could control, please, or manipulate others. And now, with you no longer part of that equation, they're faced with an unanswerable question. Who am I if there's no one left to control this? Is when the narcissist's inner world becomes hollow, like a room with no mirrors, no windows, no light. All the masks that once made them feel powerful, the seductive lover, the wounded victim, the successful powerhouse are now useless without someone there to validate them. And like a lost child, they fall into crisis, but lack the emotional maturity or vocabulary to name the pain. They may try to keep up appearances, going to work, smiling in public, posting cheerful photos, but their eyes begin to look empty. Their behavior grows distorted. Their sleep becomes shallow. Many panic attacks creep in. And perhaps worst of all, they begin to not recognize themselves in the mirror. Not in the literal sense, but in the psychological one. They look and see nothing. No identity, no meaning, no center. This is a quiet collapse. And because narcissists are not allowed to appear weak in the world they've constructed, they can't ask for help. They won't say, "I'm not okay." Because doing so would require a stable sense of self strong enough to admit vulnerability. And without an inner foundation, they have no idea how to piece themselves back together. The pain they now feel doesn't come from you. It comes from the void your absence has left behind. A space once filled with your gaze, your emotions, your sincere presence, things they never truly knew how to value. And now they can't find that same depth in anyone else, and they certainly can't create it within themselves. And that's when the brutal truth finally reaches them. It's not that they lost you, it's that they never truly had themselves. Stage 8, the quiet ending. The quiet ending. You moved on and they stayed stuck in the end. When every tactic has been exhausted, every role has fallen apart, and there's no one left to play. Pretend with the narcissist finds themselves facing a conclusion. They never prepared for the silence of their own making a world without you. The one who once illuminated the parts of them they couldn't face, who loved, forgave, and held on to hope, now echoes only with the hollow remnants of what they've lost and can no longer name. But unlike you, their silence brings no peace. It's not the stillness of healing. It's the stillness of being stuck while you walked away with a heavy yet determined heart. Learning to rebuild yourself with truth and dignity, they remain spinning in the same endless loop. Manipulation, reaction, control, blame. You're no longer there, no longer answering, no longer hoping or holding on, no longer wishing they would finally understand. And that's when they feel it, not with their mind, but in their gut. They've lost the one thing that once made them feel truly seen. But the cruel truth is they will never admit it. Not to you, not to anyone, maybe not even to themselves. Because doing so would mean confronting a truth more painful than being abandoned. That they were once genuinely loved and they destroyed it with their own hands? Meanwhile, you, the one who once broke, once wandered lost, who once handed your whole heart to the wrong hands, have now found yourself again. Not through revenge, not through their apology, but by finally letting go of something that never truly existed. The version of them they never had the courage to become. You walked away not needing to win, not needing to act out a final scene, not needing anyone to applaud. Because you've realized the real victory isn't in making them understand. It's in no longer needing them to. And no matter how much they smile for someone new, boast of new accomplishments, or repaint their image, will remain stuck in the same old story. A story where their most loyal audience has left the theater, and the stage will never be lit again. You don't defeat a narcissist with words. You don't teach them a lesson through anger. You don't need their admission to heal. The real victory happens in the quiet moment when you walk away and never look back. Not out of hatred, not out of coldness, but because you've outgrown the game they once built. You once loved you, once forgave. You once believed that if you were good enough, they would change, but eventually you realized no one can heal a person who refuses to face themselves. And so you made the bravest choice of all to let go without needing a response. In their world, that's collapse. In yours, that's rebirth. No longer controlled by someone else's emotions. No longer defining your worth through someone else's gaze. You stepped out of their script into the light and began writing a new story. One where you are finally the main character. And maybe they'll never understand why you left. Maybe they'll never acknowledge the truth you once offered. But that doesn't matter anymore because you no longer need validation from someone who only ever saw you through your reactions. Never through your soul. Now, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need a beautiful closure. You don't need them to know you're okay, because the peace within you is the answer. Not for them, but for you. The one who walked out of the darkness, scarred but standing tall, and chose to keep going. And if you ever doubt whether you did the right thing, remember this. The narcissist lost you when they tried to control you.